Exploring Healthier Masculinity Within Business, a monthly call for executive and senior leaders within industry who too rarely have a space to stop, to breathe, to take off the weight of being a leader of teams and organizations. Taking place on the first Monday of every month. Email gary.turner@radicality.co.uk. Hello there, and welcome to the next episode of In the Business of Healthy Masculinity. Thank you for joining us either by audio on Spotify, Apple, or maybe you're watching us on the Substack. However you're watching us today, thanks for joining us, and I'm really excited to bring on my next guest, who is someone that is a very cool human who works in senior level within commercial operations, within industry, and that is a good human being called Paul Jameson. So welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing?
Thank you, Gary. It's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, well, I appreciate you joining me today. Would you like to give just maybe a sort of 60-second, 90-second overview so that the viewers and the listeners get to know a little bit more about Paul? You know, what drives you, what motivates you, and really importantly, you know, why did you turn up to this crazy conversation today?
Yeah, well, I'm slightly different, which is a thing that I carry around with me slightly differently to most commercial senior sort of C-suite leaders. So I'm actually a qualified chef. So I spent years being a chef, learning that really, really complex structure around people and that sort of emotional state when you're rushing around a kitchen really gives you a real deep understanding in, oh my God, how the hell do I manage? How do I manage this stress and everything else? And that's been sort of the backbone to how I manage everything going forward. People are so important. The barriers between teams is important to break down. And that's really been my mantra right the way through to where I am now as a chief commercial officer and chief operations officer in a startup business, which requires a very different mindset. So that sort of background and knowledge through my careers, from being a lowly chef right the way through to where I am now, has been really, really important.
So intriguing. And you mentioned straight away around breaking down barriers within teams. That's really, you're almost getting to the heart of a lot of why this platform exists. And the reason being, we don't really, particularly us men, don't really have, in my experience, haven't really had spaces like you and I are co-creating today to just stop and breathe and explore and say what works well, what doesn't work well. Actually, what you said over there really upset me. I want to have a conversation about that. In my experience of 25 years in industry, we don't do that well as men within business. And I would appreciate your challenges, thoughts, reflections around that.
Yeah, and even as junior members of staff and as men in the workplace, we still don't allow ourselves that time to stop and think, and really give us that opportunity to understand kind of what's happening around you. You get caught in this sort of flow, if you like. It's this sort of torrent river. Sometimes it's calm, other times it's been raining upstream, and you've got these torrents coming downstream, which are really kind of pulling you along, and you just go with it. You haven't got a choice. You're just having to go with everyone else in this sort of crazy dynamic that is created within business. And sometimes it feels like the leader's got the tap. They're the one opening and closing that tap.
Interesting.
Creating that sort of dynamic in a business, which at times it might be really exciting, but you've got to be careful with how you flow it as a manager, as a leader, because if you leave it open too long thinking this is great, everyone's working like crazy, you're going to hit a wall and all that water's going to come flashing back at you. So that's how I see it in my mind.
Wow.
But
Paul, I love that. I'm literally having an energetic reaction as you share that, because I think everyone will resonate with that metaphor, whether it be a senior leader or executive that's watching us now going, actually, yeah, I do have the power to turn that tap on and off more than I realized. Or an employee within a team or a team leader that's going, yeah, Paul, that I feel like I'm literally barely breathing. I'm almost drowning, literally and metaphorically, day in, day out.
Yeah.
What would some of your ideas be for, if there's an executive or senior leader listening to us or watching us right now, it's going, actually, Paul, thank you for that. I haven't actually spotted that I've got a choice. I've got a choice to switch how I dial up and dial down that.
Yeah, I think it's, am I a tap or am I a valve? And that's the other way I see it. So am I the valve? So someone's pushing the water at me, and they're the people above me, the board, the shareholders, or other influences in the business. Are they who's in control of that water flow? And am I a valve? And if you're a valve, look at what's happening. Am I just relieving my pressure by pushing it downstream, or am I controlling that pressure? So if I've got the valve capability, how do I look behind me and say, right, what's happening, and why is it happening to me, and why am I forcing it downstream? So for me, it's that visibility, looking at what's happening and being honest with yourself. Is like, this is broken. How do I fix it? It's not bad that you've seen it. It's actually so positive that you've recognized something. And actually, how do I fix it? How do I bring that to my mindset and how it's working in a way that allows me to stop being the valve, stop being that pressure point, or stop being the tap, being in control of that, and actually have that conversation. And I think it's too easy to just get caught up in your own panic or stresses or frustrations that you carry home, you bring back to work, you sit in your home offices. You don't actually have that release anymore of getting on a train as much as we used to, getting in the car and having that hours drive, hours train journey or longer to just decompress. And it's how do you do that? Which I think we've lost some of that capability over the last sort of 4 or 5 years post-COVID.
That's super intriguing. God, my mind's going so many different ways. Before I come back to you, again, particularly those that are listening that can't see, Paul's LinkedIn, if you want to follow him, connect with Paul. It's linkedin.com/in/Paul Jameson, Paul Jameson, and then the number 1, all one word. What's really piqued my interest is first of all, I just love how you sort of speak and vision, which is really helpful, that sort of tap, valve, release. We can all feel and get a sense of where we are in that system. And I want to talk about the system of work for a second, because what's really popped up for me is, I believe, and again, I want you to challenge me and build on this, I believe that even if we have a shareholders, and I work in organizations that do have a board that publicly floated, etc., the senior executives actually get a choice how to design their system. Yeah. So for sure, there's either a torrent coming down, it can be a valve, it can be a tap coming from the shareholders, whatever. But these senior execs and leaders have a choice how to design their system below that or around that. And I just wonder how consciously CEOs, CFOs, etc., in your experience, as a chief commercial officer, how conscious has it been for you and your exec teams that you've worked with that we actually get a choice here? We can stop and go, are we designing this the right way? Or can we design it in better ways?
I think everyone starts off with that lovely vision of that moment in time where you've walked into a new role, you've inherited the system, the pipe work, the infrastructure around that pipe work. Some of them are insulated, some might have bits of duct tape over it to try and prevent leakage. But you've inherited this system, and I think we all walk in with this beautiful moment where you've got time, people are giving you time to make those changes, but the reality is the business still has to run. And how do you isolate in a particular area? I'm not a plumber, but how do you isolate that particular area and make the change to the pipework or the infrastructure around that pipework so the flow of work and business and success can be changed whilst you're trying to keep everything else? And I think that the pressure on, it's probably a message for those above the board, the shareholders, that actually time is the critical piece. Yes, the business has to run. Yes, we have to provide value back to the people that have invested in the organization. But time is the critical part. We have to have time to make it truly successful and put that foundation in the right way so it is as stable as it physically can be. Otherwise, everything's built on kind of unstable ground. And you're always tweaking and playing and hoping and fingers crossed it's not going to leak all around me, or the pressure on me isn't going to get too much so I can't hold back that torrent. And I think it's not often that you get time to make those changes and make them stick in the right way.
See, this is really, really interesting for me, because I'm curious, getting into in the business of healthy masculinity, right? So masculinity being a construct, we all know that, but you and I had a few conversations. We dial up. Sometimes we need to be assertive. Sometimes we need to challenge people, and at the same time, you can do that with love, with care, with a belief in their potential, right? You can do all of those things at the same time. Now, what I witness too often, or I have witnessed over the years, is people, honestly, particularly in bigger companies, are literally a widget in that pipework. You know, they're not humans. They don't have families. They don't have kids. They don't have anything else going on in their life apart from being a unit of production within that system. And I'm just curious, how do we get the boards, the financial? I know this is a big hairy topic, right? Financial markets, C-suites, executive teams. How can we shift the mindset that says, actually, we're going to make even more money, have even more impact as a business if we just build in space, time, to allow people by design to actually stop, to breathe, to reflect, to connect, and that this isn't just a waste of time?
Yeah, I think it's recognizing the widget. So it's who the widgets that exist are there for a reason. There's not, I think, less so now perhaps than in history, where you've got multiple people doing all very similar jobs, and I think it's fairly streamlined now. Businesses tend to,
I would agree,
which adds to pressure. So that widget does something, and it does something valuable. Don't ignore the widgets, because actually, without all those widgets beneath you, the structure falls over. I think we don't do very well is really understand, because when people leave, they're leaving for a reason. Most people don't want to leave a job because they like it. Yeah, they might leave for money. They might leave, the grass is greener. It sometimes isn't, but the grass is greener. But why has that widget left? Why has that individual taken that stressful kind of decision to move away from something they do, move away from something they know, into something brand new? Now, that's quite a stressful position to be in. It's quite a big decision to make, especially if you have a family. You've gone through that conversation internally with your family. But why is that widget left? I don't think we ever take the time to really understand, or give that individual, that widget, the time to say, I left because otherwise it's always sour grapes, or it's always moaning at a person. But who's listening? Who's listening to that knowledge? For me, would be absolutely critical, because that's why all the other widgets perhaps are operating like they are, because that's that foundation that keeps the business running. The shareholders are providing resource, money. The board are providing the direction element and supporting the direction of the C-suite. But those widgets really do need to be that foundation and be respected as the foundation, because without it, it just, the business doesn't exist, and we don't take the time to understand what's happening down there. The secret boss that goes into the restaurants,
yes,
Instagram. It's that, knowing what happens on the floor, and that's what I did as a chef. The chefs worked front of house. We had to scrub them up a bit and make them shave, but the chef worked every one day a week. One of the chefs worked front of house with the waiting staff, and one of the waiters worked in the kitchen. So they understood. So during a week, everybody, including myself as the head chef and the head waiter, we swapped roles. So everybody understood. And within a week, the hot plate, which is always this barrier between the waiting staff and the kitchen, was turned. So we didn't pass stuff over, we passed stuff along. And that dynamic opened up the kitchen. So there wasn't a barrier between the two departments. We were one team serving the customer. And I think that knowledge goes unchecked. That knowledge of what is actually happening on the floor. Do I know what the widgets do? What way are they spinning? What way are they flowing the water? Where is it going? All of that, I think, is not given the time or the credibility, if you like, in a business that is really important. There's a real, that's that masculinity piece. Is I'm the senior C-suite boss. I should know, and the expectation is I should know everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything because I haven't asked the questions. I haven't put myself in their shoes. All those old-fashioned cheesy phrases about walking in the shoes of others and all that sort of thing. It's real. It's true.
Yeah, it's empathy, right?
Yeah. Do I really know what I put them through on a day-to-day basis.
But what a beautiful way of phrasing that. What I put them, and see, I've got so many things popping up for me, Paul, around power as well. I love that story you share around spinning the hot plate, because literally what come up for me very viscerally was in that moment of that exchange was, look, I understand your role, you understand mine.
Yeah,
we can empathize each other's roles. And by the way, we're going to flip the power dynamic now, so that you're not serving us, we're serving one another within this organizational structure. That's massive.
And there is a customer. The customer at the end gets a better service or a better product. And that's the ultimate. We're all serving a customer in that situation. And we've got to look at that in a better way.
Again, for anyone that's listening, so I don't always mention it when I'm on this podcast for whatever reason, but Paul and I both work in senior commercial roles. So, you're not just listening to two men having a conversation, it's two senior men within corporations, within businesses, within startups that actually run teams and want to be in this conversation because we know that work can be better for people, right? And I just wanted to put that context back in, Paul, because we don't often hear. There's a bit of a stereotype about the commercial team, right? It's all about them. It's all about just hitting the numbers. Don't get me wrong, all that stuff's important. We've got bills to pay and the rest of it. But that's why I'm also enjoying this conversation, because hopefully we're modeling that healthier masculinity as well, to say we don't have all the answers. We don't know what's perfect. We don't know what works in your setting. You don't know what works in my context. But we're willing to be curious. We're willing to invest 30 minutes in each other to actually explore our perspectives. Yeah,
and it's also where if you those that are listening, think about, is there a barrier between me and another department, my department and other people in the business? That barrier is causing the business to slow down. Using that analogy of a river, it's gates, it's on a canal, what are they called?
Locks.
Locks. It's either you're going to have the lock open and we're all in this together, or am I going to be that lock that's closed, or am I going to open one side and not the other, so it's trapping things? So, and am I just think about, am I causing those, or am I a recipient of that? Or are there other people in the organization that have built a barrier towards me for whatever reason? It could just be historical. It could be the previous owner of the job that created that barrier and it's never been broken down. It's not weakness to break those barriers down. Actually, it's a huge strength in recognizing that barrier exists.
And now you're really hitting the nub, right, of this whole conversation, which is, are we, and bear in mind, it is still the majority of men in positions of power within particularly big business and even in startup ecosystems. Are we prepared to acknowledge, be vulnerable, that we don't have all the answers, that actually we need the help of those teams that are around us? Or does that invulnerability, that fear that comes with invulnerability, cause dysfunction all around this system?
And I think the more senior you get, the more worried individuals, people, me, you, us, are admitting there is a problem that needs to be fixed in a way that the problem could be I've caused it, and I need to own up to, actually, I've created this. How do we change it? And I think because everyone's concerned about their roles, keeping their roles, and if I admit some of this stuff, does that make me or my role look weaker? And it's that fear, unprobably warranted, to be fair, fear that actually gets people into a position they can't move away from.
I'm so glad we're bringing this up. Fear, vulnerability, empathy. What I'm hoping people watching and listening to us today, I'm absolutely convinced, and this has come through the dozen or so conversation before this one on the platform, Paul, our humanity, our ability to slow down, to listen, to empathize, to co-create together, all stuff you've spoken to brilliantly from your chef days through to what you've been working in your recent jobs. All of that humanness, the messy stuff that's actually really hard to do well. And Gary Ridge, who we both know, Gary Ridge joined me on episode 5 of this platform, and he had a beautiful algorithm, and he said very simply, will of the people, time strategy is your impact. That's how you get high performance. And he said strategy bit's easy, will of the people is really, really hard, and it's continuous and repeat and consistent work that's required, and it's deeply, deeply human.
And which way round was that? It was the will of the people first.
Time strategy, will of the people first.
Will of the people first.
Exactly.
The widgets at the bottom, the people that are getting hit by that torrent are the first people that need to be engaged, not the last. And it's that bottom-up approach that is absolutely critical. Absolutely. So I've heard those words from him before, but it's that I echo that completely, because it's people, it's that humanness.
But it's amazing how that gets lost due to the business of the torrent, right? And I guess if we're inviting anybody who's working in a business or is senior in a business, like how the invitation from me, at least, Paul, I'd love you to share your invitation, is be really intentional about creating space. Yeah. Whether it's once a quarter, whether it's once a month, just find space just to be honest. I wanted to pick up your word, to be honest about how is our business running, what works well, what doesn't, like a bit like Agile, right? What works well, what doesn't work well, what could we improve, what do we need to do that? Because I am absolutely, and I know this as a fact, because I ran a team for 3 years and we added 6 million in sales, 1.5 million in margin just by shifting the culture of that team, Paul. And we had everything there. We had the people, we had the insight, we had the wisdom, we had the passion. It just wasn't being leveraged until that point.
And it's somehow removing the fear in that quarterly meeting. You know, I've sat in them for years, and where the boss at the front says, "Oh, right, I want you to give me some feedback," and everyone sits there in silence because they're terrified about actually saying what they've all been talking about around the water cooler an hour before, because the scene hasn't been set. You know, that the person at the front needs to be human. Strip back the titles, the roles, stand up there in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts. Just not be you, be somebody else, and give everybody else in that room the chance to see you as you, and not the role that you carry with you. And I think that's the real challenge, is the authenticity of people when they are in that type of feedback session. Are they going to get the feedback they need, not want, need? They really need it. But so do other people need to be able to give it to each other in the room in a safe and what stays in the room is in the room. It's dealt with in the room, but actually we leave as better people.
What's been a recent example for you, maybe a semi-recent example, Paul, where you've sort of spotted or noticed within yourself or within teams you've been working with, the healthy side of masculinity versus the unhealthy side? You got any examples you could share in recent days?
Well, I'm going through an interesting time over the last few weeks. So I'm actually moving out of the business that I'm in, not through any choice, actually, not through a negative need, but just from having different owners and the need to look at cost basis. So I'm moving out of the business I'm in, and actually, prior to being told that, the business was in a bit of a sort of shape that was, we'd just come off the stock market. We'd been on it for 3 years. The stock market wasn't quite working for us as a business. And so we'd come off that stock market, but it's the pressure of the shareholders driving the behavior ultimately, because when you're listed in that way in a small, relatively new startup kind of shaped business, the pressure is immense, and don't do things necessarily for the long-term benefit. It's a bit of a short-term game in a way, to raise money, spend it in the right way, try and drive sales, get that revenue up, raise some more money. It's that cycle, and the potential expectation mismatch drives a particular behavior. And I think that's where my analogy of the torrent comes from, because that pressure of that water coming downstream, you can almost hear it. You can feel the shift in that tsunami moment, potentially, where the water goes back and then it comes flashing through. You're sensing it, but you physically can't do anything about it. And that feeling is awful, knowing that you can't prevent what's going to happen happening. And how you try and prevent it by putting more pressure on your team, get things done, change cost base, move this, do that, do this, and it becomes very dictatorial as an approach, and not very collegiate, because it's all about, I need to do this to stop this from happening, to stop that from happening. And that same message is coming from my boss and the people around him. And that's, and nothing, and you can just feel it, and it feels awful, because you know that you shouldn't necessarily be acting in a particular way, but you become the same person that you don't like being treated like. You then look the other way and do the same, because that's just this, we've just got to get stuff done. Get it done, do it, just do it. I don't care, just do it.
It's so intriguing, though, and thank you for sharing such a real example, because the thing I'm always curious about is narratives as well, as part of this sort of healthy, unhealthy masculine approach. Like what you just described, and I know it firsthand because I've worked in companies private that's gone public, etc. It's a total illusion, right? It's made up. Like the majority of that pressure is completely made up, right? How the short-termism of it, there's not actually, no one's actually going to die if you don't deliver these things in the way that you're being told you have to. But the amount of fear that gets pushed down through that system makes it feel real when it actually isn't. And
I think that's where you then stop being that human and that ability to say stop, because you can't. You're going to drown if you stop, because you're treading water and the water's getting higher and higher. But it's actually, how do you then take it to a point where you just take a breath? You've taken enough breath so you can go under, but you're going to come back up again. And that is you need to trust that you're going to come back up. Take that deep breath, solve the problems, find the plug, pull the plug out, and then you're gonna rise back up again, or pull the cord on your life jacket, whatever it is you need to do. But take that breath and give yourself that moment is absolutely critical.
That's a stunning insight, and it really resonates with me personally. As we look to wrap up, Paul, I just want to say thank you for bringing such real inside business, executive experience right to the conversation. That's really what I wanted to do with this. It's very easy, and I've done it before, where you can have conversations about the theory, and in a book, or when you've got 2 days at an event, it's a lot easier to process this stuff. When you're actually up against it like you are, I just think that last insight, like, you've got to give yourself space, right? You have to, otherwise you drown.
No, it's absolute. I completely feel that, and that's something that, with all the what's happened over the last 6 to 8 weeks, if you like, personally for me, that's how I'm going to take forward what I've learned myself. You don't stop learning, and that's the other thing. You don't stop learning, and actually, I'm going to take that forward with me.
Wow. Well, I know you've got a wonderful future ahead, Paul. When this comes out, it's going to, we're recording at the end of November 2025. It will come out early in 2026. Just to remind everybody again, LinkedIn/Paul Jameson, all one word. Paul's details will be in the show notes of this conversation. I want to give you the last word, Paul. Just really appreciate your time, your honesty, your humility. Anything else you want to leave with the listeners or viewers?
Just you might want to cut this out, but there's one thing that over the last 4 weeks of everything that I've been going through personally with roles and changing and needing to move out of the business, looking back at my chefing side, I'm actually going to combine that chefing and actually put a YouTube channel together. It's going to be called Food for Thought, and actually use the process of making your evening meal. Everyone has to eat, right? Whether they're going to do a meal in the microwave or they're going to do a meal on the stove for their family. Everybody has to eat, but use that as a moment to take that breath. So is actually talk. So I'm going to be talking to camera whilst making, the kitchen's not perfect. I'm not going to be dressed up in a chef or anything like that. I'm just going to be talking about what are you doing when you're making something, and take the time, even if it's just piercing the lid on a microwave meal. Listen to what that noise is. The noise that it makes when you chuck a knife into a top of a microwave meal is great, and use that sound to do something to you inside. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few months, to really bring that business piece to what people have to do, and the love that I have for cooking.
Well, that's definitely not getting cut out, Paul. That's a genius idea. And once it's up and running, give me the link and I'll stick it in the show notes.
Fantastic.
So thanks for joining me, Paul. And thank you everyone for watching or listening, and take care for now.